and welcome to 10 Very Big Books, a Malazan read-through podcast. My name is Peter Bond. I've read every book in the main series. However, my co-hosts are reading the series for the first time. With me today is my friend and closest confidant, India Jones.
Hello, all.
Our producer, AJ Fileri, is with us. How are the levels?
The
How
people's champion, AJ Fileri, is here. Hi, everybody. The levels look
really
People's champion.
The levels look good.
Trying to build it up.
Yeah.
And he plays the foil. He's the villain of our podcast. It's Joshua Dean Baker.
You'll never guess what my nefarious plan is this week.
Okay.
Guys, does anyone know what time it is?
9:20.
You're gonna say some dumb shit.
I actually think it's like just before midnight. You know, it's just before midnight, you could say.
For you?
What?
I'm like before midnight tides.
That's like the books.
Is that one of the books we're reading?
Because we're done House of Chains now,
yeah.
and it's before midnight tides.
Cool.
You know?
I'm like pretty sure it's 10:20 for you, and if that's just before midnight, you got some stuff to figure out.
I mean, I am pretty sleepy. I'm not gonna lie, but I was very keen on that. And that's all to say today on the show. We finished reading House of Chains, and we're going to do our mailbag kind of wrap-up episode and talk about our general thoughts about House of Chains, the series so far, and answer and respond to some listener questions. We got a ton of great ones, and as always, we're not going to be able to get to them all, but thank you to everyone who wrote in. So, with my amazing intro out of the way... Let's get into it.
I mean, I thought it was pretty good, but then you addressed the fact that it maybe wasn't that good. So now I don't know.
It was pretty good. Thank you, ma'am.
Peter, why are you so chic today?
Yes,
I know.
my
You missed it.
word.
Did you see his cardigan earlier? It was fucking fire.
Oh my god.
Who do you think you are? Does your
AJ, keep
apartment
this-
smell of mahogany and
this in the show,
leather-bound
AJ.
books?
Yeah, I have a few candles going.
Yeah,
you know?
say it looks like there's a roaring fireplace behind you. Maybe shut the lights off.
Yeah,
Get some
crackling.
mood lighting.
Okay.
Your floor-to-ceiling frickin' bookshelf. I'm done. Go ahead.
Quick side note. Keep this in the show if you want. So on Wednesday, I really fucked up myself. AJ heard about this. So we were gonna have a production meeting about the show. We had to cancel it because I ate a carrot, and in eating the carrot, I inhaled a bunch of it, and like a bunch of tiny carrot particles went down my windpipe. And I for a few hours was throwing up carrot and like coughing up carrot. It was really fucked up.
What I would like to say.
I'm still uncomfortable because of this carrot incident.
What I would like to say is, as someone that lived with Peter for 2 years, there is zero part of me that is shocked by this, because Peter eats like at any moment he's going to be told no more food for the rest of the week. Just any moment. There is no slow Peter eating. It is always fast and loud.
I remember one time. I remember I was only ever drawn to the noises when
we're
Josh
thinking of the same
pointed
story.
out that I was eating cereal and moaning
Yeah,
while I was eating the
for
cereal.
2 months, the first year we lived together, for 2 months, Peter ate breakfast every morning with his giant studio headphones in, and he did not know that his cereal eating went like this. For 5 minutes, it was aggressive and then done. But every morning, I had 5 minutes of Peter moaning and eating.
Only 5 minutes. Oh my god, that's very.
Eventually, he asked me to stop, and I kind of recognized the moaning. But listen, I'll still moan sometimes when I'm eating a good bowl of noodles or something. You know.
Well, you got
I think we all moan sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. Now,
Jesus Christ.
this is a sex-positive show, baby.
Sure.
All right, let's kick it in. Our first question comes from Wintermoon on Discord, and it's a little topical. You know, they ask, how do you feel? Well, they kind of say that they feel like their mindset affects what they're reading and the experiences they have. Mm-hmm. So they kind of asked, how do you feel current events affected this read-through of House of Chains? And furthermore, we haven't really touched in about the pandemic that much on the show. Mm-hmm. So I guess I don't know. What do you think? Do you bring those current events into you when you're reading? Or do you think that, I don't know. I'm curious what you think, Inge.
That's a really good question. I think it definitely affected my read through this time. I think I enjoyed reading it more, because it was kind of like a mental break and escape from what's going on, to just read about somebody else's misfortune. And then again, because we couldn't really do much, I found myself with a lot more time and like intent to read the book and actually digest it. And I think I read more frequently and I enjoyed the story more, I think, because everything else is kind of shitty on the outside.
Yeah, I think I agree. I don't know how much I bring current events in. I definitely think my mood affects it more, like the type of day I'm having. But especially since, especially since this story is it is high fantasy and it's so removed from our world. I don't know if I necessarily bring into my concerns about politics or, I don't know, these things into my reading of these books.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think I agree with both of you. I think I could, excuse me, I can see how like current events and everything could affect the way that you interpret some of the stuff that's happening. But I think for me, I was in the same boat as India, where I just found myself with more time to commit to reading. And also with Peter, it's just like I used it as a form of kind of escapism, more or less, to just like it's just like so disconnected from what is happening currently. I don't want to say disconnected from the real world, because there are, it does deal with real events and stuff, but just like specifically what's happening now, I didn't really find a lot of connections within the text, I guess.
For me, I think it's just that I never have time. And so this is the only time in my life that I'll read a Malazan book and then get done the section I made myself do that day and then go, I could read more. And I'll never think that again in my life. That's about it. Because usually I get it done. I give myself like X amount of time for 30 pages. And then I'm like, ugh. And then I put the book down. But this time I did that. And then I was like, well, I've got 8 hours left of my day. I guess I could read more of this.
Yeah.
That's about it. This next question's from Aaron on Discord. They asked, are there any other characters from which you'd like to see extended point of views, like Karsa at the beginning of House of Chains? I would like to start off by naming some characters that I don't want to see extended point of views from. Number 1 is Karopust. I'm good out here, thank you. Number 2, his wife, whose name I can't be bothered to remember. Mokrul?
Mogwara.
Hey, I had M.O. It's not bad. Hey, what was the little demon monkey from the first book's name?
Oh my gosh.
Wasn't he also an M.O. name?
That was so sad they left him there. I want to die.
No.
What's Cutter's real name?
God.
Crocus Monkey Pet.
It is killing
Let's make some associations.
Y'all, that's got Google's like, are you okay, Josh?
Do not Google it. I can do it.
Crocus Malazan Pet.
Oh my god!
Oh, I got it. Do you want it? Do you want it? I was really close. It was to start with M-O. It's Moby, which I think I said. I said Mogi.
Moby.
It's Moby.
Fucking Christ!
I was close.
I would have never gotten it.
I was
to be
so
honest.
close. Yeah.
Mackerel.
Yeah.
Macaroon.
But anyway, yeah, I don't need to see either of them with extended POVs. So,
Inge, what do you think? Character you'd like to see a long point of view section from, kind of like the Karsa opening?
I could use some more Lestara Gil.
ooh, preach.
She's fun, and she has her point of views were always fun and funny, but also like serious and dry. She's a good character. I'd like to know more.
I do, Indy, I agree. I think Lestara would be a very cool character. I think Pearl would be neat too, because we don't really know anything about Pearl. But my first thought, what?
I do not need to see a long 300 pages on Pearl. No, thank you.
Hey, it could be secretly very, very interesting. But my first thought was, and maybe this is a little milquetoast. I think Kalam and Fiddler would make some pretty interesting, like extended deep dives into their histories.
Wait, who was that? Sorry.
Kalam or Fiddler or Quickben, honestly, any of the bridge burners, to be quite honest, like even fucking Hair Shirt. What's their name?
Hair Shirt.
Oh, Spindle?
Grundle.
Spindle?
Yes, Spindle.
Spindle.
Yeah, but honestly, any of the bridge burners I think would make an interesting, like, extended.
Hey, did you guys know the word Milquetoast comes from the character Caspar Milquetoast from the comic strip The Timid Soul? Huh.
So I think for me, the reason I disagree, here's what I'm trying to say, is I think part of the power of the Karsa section, in addition to it being so rooted in one point of view,
Are you
which I
about to
think
tell me
is
this was
very
a
well
trick
done.
question and the answer was no one all along? Fuck you.
All I'm saying is I think some of the power of that section comes from that it's starting from a place of mystery and then it like ends up at a place we already know.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
So I guess I feel like that's something I appreciate, and that's something Steve is interested in his storytelling. So I guess, I don't know, the idea of just doing it about Pearl, which AJ seems so excited about.
Okay, it was just
I don't know how much I'm into that idea, but
that's fair.
you know.
I do think I think there could be an interesting way to do that, like you said, Pete, starting from mystery, where doing the backstory of one of the mages that Quick Ben has absorbed. And just like start it from this random mage, and at the very end of his story, he dies and is absorbed into what's his name?
Adolphus Ben Delat. I was pretty close with that.
Inge, do you want to read the next one?
No, but I will. These two come in from Colin Farrow from Twitter. Maybe Karsa's murder of Bidethal was less about Bidethal's death than it was about Erikson developing Karsa's character. And the second one is Corbolo Dom. My first read through, this book, I thought his double-cross narrative was a load of crap. But listening to your podcast triggered another thought. He must have prepped his assassins to kill the whirlwind goddess long ago, and adds legitimacy.
So I'll say I do think that a component of the Bidethal ending and having Karsa kill him is purposeful to resolve to try and resolve Karsa's journey with sexual violence. But I still think it's underdeveloped for my thing. But we don't need to retread that ground necessarily.
Yeah,
but I'd be curious. What?
I was gonna say, if anything, it kind of just is like a very clean end to, all right, we don't need to worry about Bidethal anymore. You know what I mean? It makes it very clear that he is a one and done book villain.
Yeah. But I'd be curious to know what you guys think about this Corbolo Dom thought, and I'd love to know what you think about his claim altogether. You know?
It's still bad. Still think
you don't buy it.
I think his plan is still stupid. I don't know.
Just because he had one good part of the plan doesn't, I don't know. I wouldn't say that makes him legitimate, quote unquote, you know?
Yeah. And also, I feel like if there weren't 80 other things happening that night, would his assassins actually have made it and killed, Shaik's body in her realm? Like, I'll give Corbolo Dom that. His assassins did manage to do it, but like, there was also so much confusion and just things happening. Like, if that wasn't the case and it was just the night before the battle, I don't know if I believe that would have worked as like efficiently as it did here.
But I'm saying you can't say he's wrong. He did orchestrate the killing of the whirlwind goddess.
He did do that.
He did do it.
To be fair, true. She was also just sitting in the woods. Just
I would say that's less of Corbolo Dom being smart and more of Shaik being unbelievably dumb. Like,
but she was also under assault from the crippled god, no? In some way? There were chains and stuff. I assume that was crippled god stuff.
Yes, chains were there.
You into that crippled god stuff?
Oh my god, India.
Dude,
it's no longer BDSM, it's now TCG stuff.
Sean from Gmail sends in quite a few comments, but I'm going to start with this one. I think withholding basic info from the reader about everyone's missions from Cotillion was a misstep. It makes it hard to connect with a lot of key characters, Kalam, Lestara, Cutter, etc. And it also feels kind of artificial. Like, you can see the authorial meddling involved in preventing this information from reaching you. And the payoff doesn't really justify all the point of view gymnastics.
Ooh. Snaps for Sean.
Ooh,
I agree.
There's a whole other paragraph, y'all.
That is spicy, Sean.
Yeah, and so what's you're feeling it?
I so agree. That's so true. I never have any idea what's going on when he pops in and has conversations and then leaves and nothing happens and there's no information of what's to come. I totally agree with that. It's just like it happens. And honestly, because it's so informal and there's no real like idea of where it's going, I kind of forget a lot of the times when he even visited someone or what he even said to them. So snaps for Sean.
Yeah, I forgot.
Go ahead.
I was just say, I forgot for a while that Cotillion came and talked to Lestara until I was editing that episode because it just like came up and then it was done and then never really came up again until the end of the book.
Yeah, I really like the authorial meddling, how he phrases that, because Steve is very big on saying, well, no, you're not, it's not that I'm not telling you, you're just not seeing from that character's point of view. But I think Sean's got a point. Like, Steve makes the decision to just stop scenes. Like when he doesn't want you to know what happens next. Like we're inhabiting that person. It's just that there's like another 30 seconds to a minute that the author has decided, well, it would be better if you didn't know this. Trust me. That's an interesting idea.
Well, it's definitely a choice about when to conceal something for dramatic tension and when not to, right? I think for me, it works the least when it comes to someone like Kalam, you know? And I think that's why I struggled to invest in his journey in this book, because just, I guess we're doing something, and I'm not that invested in the idea of Cotillion doing, I'm not that invested in him. So therefore, his mysterious desires, I am also not that invested in, However, I think, me, I'm a big Crocus Cutterhead. I think actually having an ambiguous, nebulous goal is actually pretty good in that situation, because I think it reflects these characters' emotional states. Do you know what I mean? I don't think Apsalar or Cutter really have a goal or journey that they're actually trying to go on. So I think actually obscuring that information from the reader actually furthers that characterization, and I think it works really well there. So I think I agree with Sean, but I suppose in different ways and different times.
And the second half of Sean's email continues. All that said, I do want to come to the book's defense on one point: Karsa's ending and his thoughts on mercy. To me, it's not that he doesn't understand the concept of mercy, it's just that he expresses it in the only language he knows, which is violence. Karsa hates the invisible chains that bind people, the chains of civilization, or the gods, or the Talon ritual, or whatever. And so in killing someone like Bidethal, or Silgar, or Sibel, or even Haboric, who he thankfully doesn't reach, Karsa sees himself as an agent of mercy, not only freeing those people from their magical and or psychological chains by killing them, but also freeing the world from having to deal with these damaged people's existence, as they end up being controlled and mastered by those chains. There's mercy there in a certain twisted way.
He shouted out our Philly accents. He's from Chester County.
Oh,
so
yeah. Okay, I saw that. Yeah, much love, Sean.
Indy and I have notoriously strong Philly accents, so that makes sense.
Known for it. Friday.
Anyway, so Josh, what did you think of this and this idea of Karsa's mercy being violence?
I mean, it makes sense for the character, for sure. I think in a I think in a more standard sort of fantasy story, the big moment for Karsa would be when, like, he decides not to use the violence, and that's the mercy. In my opinion, I think Karsa's more likely to hold back violence as like a punishment. You know what I mean? Like, he does see himself as the ultimate severer of chains from this mortal coil, and if he thinks it would be like with Silgar, he just he denied him that for so long. I think to him that's like the act of non-violence is really his.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that actually is a great way to build on Sean's point, in that he definitely is abstaining from killing Silgar as an act of further punishment, and that in knowing that if he were to kill him, that would be mercy in a way. So I think that bolsters Sean's point.
Yeah, which I think is really interesting. Yeah, I like that. I think that character. I'm not gonna say I like that characterization, because there's many parts of Karsa that I'm like, woof. But it's an interesting one, to be sure. And it's one I'm excited to read more of.
So here's a question I'm going to direct it towards Ange.
Oh, okay.
Or did you have something else you want to add?
No, I just agree that I think that it's an interesting characterization, but I think I would have, I don't know, maybe this is just like an unfounded complaint or something, but I wish there was more of Karsa directly saying something like that, instead of just well, now I'm gonna go kill all these people, they're on my list,
I agree, AJ. I never thought of it as him hating the invisible chains that bind people. I thought he hated his own chains,
right? But
I didn't realize that he had put that on the people that he killed. I thought those were just himself fulfilling his own promises that he made.
Yeah, Indy, that's how I read it too. But thinking back on it in this with this context that Sean brings, I think that it is in kind of a direct opposition to the crippled god. And I mean, I guess I keep using the crippled god as the chains analogy, but the chains do apply to more than just the crippled god. But it is very much just a direct defiance of all of these chains, of the Cripple God's chains, of,
We all have chains.
everybody's got chains, baby. Break them.
And this comes from Yarnhawk from the Discord, and they say there's so many great character duos through the series. If you were dropped into the Malazan world, who are you teaming up with to create the next great pair?
Just one person?
Just one person. Inge and
Haboric.
Ooh.
interesting.
Really?
Why'd you go with Haboric?
Haboric is reliable, and he would keep me safe, and I'm hilarious. So I think that we could just be very fun together. I'm funny. He's protector, and we just have like a really like good banter back and forth. We laugh, and we kick ass and we take names, and that's it.
I have a great choice. You ready?
Mhm.
I'm going with Anamander Rake is my decision. That feels like a real odd couple vibe, do you know what I mean? Because I feel like me and Anamander have very different energies, but I think we'd be a pretty good couple, so that's what I'm going to go with.
I just don't think he can see anyone else as an equal, PB, and that's
Yeah.
where I get lost.
But I think that's the point, it would he's in a fish out of water scenario. Do you know what I mean?
Just a
I feel like
constant
he's like,
power
what's
struggle.
that? I feel like it's the reverse. He's like dropped into the real world. What's that? I have to show him around town. Do you know what I mean?
Like the devil is a part-timer. Ooh, it's very good.
Exactly. So, Josh, who are you teaming up with?
I'm really racking my brain, and I can't think of anyone that I would want to team up with.
No, not
Really?
one person.
I like a lot of these characters, but here's the problem. Every person in this series is a fucking psychopath in some way or another. Name
Aren't
me
we all?
a normal person from this book series.
Why don't you just go hang out with like Cole or Marilia?
I was gonna say Cole Maria. That was who I was gonna guess because like they're at least just kicking it in Darujistan, which I have to hope is now chill. So
Well, I do agree. I'm hesitant to choose anyone because like everyone's lives are super bad
Yeah.
and seem really, really difficult to live.
yeah,
you know?
that's why I'm like hesitant to commit to any of them right now. I don't really wanna. Maybe
Worst
maybe
case scenario, you suffer a violent death, Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Come
that
on.
does sound pretty bad.
Yeah, I'm like pretty good out here on the violent death life. So,
Yeah, I'm really struggling to think of anyone that I would deem chill enough. I don't think there is.
AJ, who are you choosing?
I've been thinking really hard about this. I don't know. But Pete, you say that everybody's having a really bad time. I think there's one character who's decidedly not having that bad of a time, and it's Karl Pust. So,
That's true.
and I think I am just kind of leaning into the Pust or Bust of it, but I don't know. I think it'd be fine to live with Karl Pust. I would get over it eventually, or my mind would break to
he
some
would
point.
drive you insane.
And I mean, then I'm just like in a dark house, whatever, man.
And then you're all just insane running around.
I'm
with
just chilling
the
out,
wife.
with a bunch of spiders and some Bolkrala, and my buddy Iskarl.
AJ, do you want to read the next question and then answer it?
Okay. This question comes from Ducks Go Mooful from Discord. Looking forward to Midnight Tides. My question is, how do you think Trull ended up where he ended up at the start of House of Chains? What sort of life do you think he's about to reveal he had in the next book? Whew. Man. I haven't decided yet if Trull is... No, you know what? I do think he's being unjustifiably punished for something silly.
Oh yeah.
But I am curious what it is.
I feel like we learn a lot about it at the beginning. If I remember correctly, it feels like... Go ahead, Peter, what were you going to say?
Well, the beginning, there is a lot of information in that prologue if you've read it,
Yeah.
actually, and I would suggest rereading it maybe after you read the fifth book. Because it's there's actually a lot of clues there, but a lot of them don't really make sense unless you kind of already know what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So definitely, I don't think when you guys first read it, that you guys picked up a lot.
Okay.
I'd reckon.
if I was from what I gathered, it sounds like his people have been corrupted towards a purpose, and he was like, "Hey, we shouldn't be doing that thing."
Yeah, I
And
definitely think he's a
specifically, there was,
dissenting voice in some way, and that's
there
what
was
got
like
him punished.
he was a dissenting voice against like one guy who had like really come in and kind of like charismatically corrupted all the Eater, and then they
Yeah.
were like, "This dude must be whatever it's called when they can't be a thing anymore."
Shorn.
That was my guess. Yeah, okay, I thought it was Shorn. Yeah, so I mean, that feels like that feels like what it has to happen or has to have happened.
You know, we still have a few more questions, but I did just want to note that we got a lot of feedback on our finale episode, specifically about how hard we were on Tavore.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, and anybody who disagrees with me is wrong. So
Oh my God.
That's how
Yeah,
I feel
and there's
about
a
that.
whole big discussion happening in the Discord. You should pop in there once in a while.
You see, the problem with I don't know how. I was just trying to log in, and I don't have any of my credentials. So I'm out of the Discord for that
You've been
reason.
shorn from the Discord.
Not because I don't want to be there.
I'm going to read this tweet. During the talk of the rightness or wrongness of not telling Tavore about the identity of X, there are two drivers of that decision, either morality or strategy. I think it's clear the moral choice is to inform Tavore, but Pearl and Lestara were acting strategically. So I suppose that's one kind of rational argument for it, but I believe most people were expressing sympathy for AJ's dissenting opinion that Pearl and Lestara were correct to shield Tavore from this information.
I'll say this.
Well-
If I was Pearl or Lestara, of course that's what I would choose. But I'm a petty bitch, and Tavore needs to know what she fucking did. And that is where that is the hill I will die
I
upon.
fully agree. If I was traveling next to Lestara, I'd be like, oh my gosh, we can't.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I feel like I would just, I don't know if I could keep it in though. That's just like such a secret. You know what I mean?
India, what do you think?
Okay, my opinion hasn't changed. If you don't agree, you're wrong. Strategically, fine. Didn't think of it that way. But listen, you kill your sister, you have to know you did it immediately. And that's just that. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you're doing.
I think the real conversation ultimately comes back to, and this is where I felt like the conversation on the Discord kept coming back to, was like, how much responsibility does she have for this initial decision of sending her? Which I think ultimately is going to hinge on how much you believe that it was the only choice she could have done in the political situation she was in, you know? And I can understand falling on either side of that, you know, and I understand feeling like this is, you know, there was no other choice. She tried the best. She tried all these things. But for me, I cannot come to that position, and I ultimately absolutely hold her accountable for that decision and do not think it was the correct one in any sort of way. So
I just want to know who said she had no other choice. I just want to know where it said that she had no other choice.
In the flashback, when we get that the estate is being stormed by the people, and Bowden and Gamut decide more or less that sending Fellison away is the best choice. That is when that happens, and
AJ,
so I do not think sending Fellison away was the correct or best choice or whatever. I think it is the choice that a child made under extreme pressure, and it obviously wasn't the right choice. But I also think Tavore knowing that Fellison is now dead, I think she knows that it is her fault. And I don't think she needs to know, hey, that person you just stabbed was your sister, because it doesn't matter what happened to Fellison. She knows that she's dead, and she knows that, or Tavore knows that she's dead, and it knows that it was her fault, pretty much. And it doesn't have to, she doesn't have to know that it was directly by her hand. Because in one way or another, no matter how Fellison died, it was by Tavore's hand. So she doesn't need to know that she literally killed her sister.
I get that. I am just not one to, you know, say you did it and you've suffered enough, so it's fine.
I get what you're saying, AJ, that she is emotionally come to terms with that. If anything, she's in denial that emotionally that she has killed her sister in the beginning of the book. And kind of it climaxes with her literally killing her sister at the end of the book, which is already kind of a moot thing in a way. Her sister has been dead,
right?
You know? Yeah.
And I would be surprised if, like, because I wouldn't say she necessarily has dealt with it at the end of House of Chains. It's just kind of like, all right. And like, I would be surprised if there isn't something that happens in whenever we come back to Tavore, whatever book that is. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of, like, you know, she has some sort of breakdown or something. That's just like, I did this, blah, blah, blah. I don't deserve to be a leader or something. And then, but.
Well, I guess we'll see, but I guess I just wanted to bring that up since it had stirred up so much discussion. And I know we had some quite hot opinions on the show, which I mostly stand by, but I basically understand the other side. I don't really think, they're that wrong.
That wrong.
That they're a little wrong, but they're not that wrong.
Definitely not right. Maybe you're not wrong, but
Josh, do you want to read this next email?
This next question comes from Kiaratan from Gmail. I wanted to chime in about Karsa's grandfather. I feel like he's such an integral part of Karsa's character development. Karsa has spent his entire life hearing glory stories from his grandfather, and his entire persona is based on his grandfather's legend. Then Karsa finds out that his hero bowed his head to pass through enemy Tavore territory, had to seek refuge with the children due to sickness, and then slaughtered his rescuers once he had regained his strength. It sounded more like a wounded animal striking out instead of the act of a conqueror, or however he portrayed himself to Karsa. This disrupts Karsa's entire worldview, and I don't think it can be overlooked.
have to roll it down.
I really love this email, and I had responded when at the time it actually came back far earlier when we read those Karsa parts, but I flagged it because I just thought it really highlighted kind of the importance of the grandfather stuff. And to me, it speaks to how often when you talk about warrior myths or these type of heroic myths, that they are built on embellishment or deception, and that it is ultimately kind of an illusion of heroism that can drive young men to commit violent acts. So that's what I really appreciated about this email. Do you guys have any thoughts?
I pretty much agree on every account, and going off of your point, Pete, about young men hearing, legends and all this stuff to live up to like the previous generation or whatever, I think is like a big comment on like the army and stuff and wars and whatnot. It's just like, the victors get to decide the narrative, and they get to say what happened and how it happened and why other people should do things and be like them, and ultimately I think that is a very dangerous thing, and I think through Karsa we can see that it's an extremely dangerous thing for the world around Karsa and any person that Karsa comes in contact with,
Further prodding at how the erosion of history can have these effects onto people.
Yeah, because especially the Toblakai people, right? They're the erosion of history, the erosion of their whole history, Yeah. So I do wish that, because at the end of this email they say it disrupts Karsa's entire worldview, and I do agree that it does, but I really wish that there was some sort of like, well, I don't know, I guess he gets immediately captured and whatnot and then deals with all that stuff. So I guess other things happened where he wasn't like reeling from the fact that his grandfather just like fully lied to him for his whole life.
Yeah. We have a final question to get to, but it's about time that we talk about House of Chains as an entire book, and then where it falls and how we feel about it in the scope of the whole series. So I'm going to come to you, AJ, first. How do you feel about House of Chains as an entirety?
In its entirety, I think immediately after I had some feelings, I guess. I had a lot of stuff to process and go through and whatnot. But I think sitting on it, because it has been a few weeks now since we have recorded that final episode, I think ultimately I will look back on it, I think, and be much more hot on it, because it feels like a lot of stuff that happens in this book is set up for future stuff, and just reading about it isn't super duper interesting in the moment. But I think when we get to like 7 and 8 and, by the final 2 books, I will definitely look back on this book as like, I don't know, it seems like something happened here that I missed, right? It feels like this is going to be a turning point, and I just don't know it yet. So I don't know. I have a lot of faith in the way that Steve writes things and the way that he thinks about his world and stuff. And he has proven time and time again that that pointless stuff, quote unquote, in the moment pointless stuff, can actually be pretty meaningful. So I think right now it's at the bottom of my list, but my list is also only Memories of Ice and this book. But I think it will climb to somewhere in the middle of the pack as we get toward the end of the series.
Josh, it looks like you're itching to get in here. What is on your mind about House of Chains as a whole?
I think I'm with AJ in a lot of ways about how, as I go through the rest of these books, I'm sure a lot of this will be much more meaningful. I actually have come to the realization that I think for me, House of Chains, my reading of it was kind of for the worst in some ways because of the podcast structure we have, because I have a very fast pace of reading, and I feel like if on my own was reading this, like, really would have cooked through it, which I think is maybe better for this book in some ways than Memories of Ice, because in Memories of Ice, we have such a big first climax with, the Battle of Capistan, and then, you have the second big event at the end, so it actually kind of really worked because there was a lot more happening. Like, there were bigger events versus House of Change to me feels like it's kind of a mad dash to this big night that, where everything happens. And I think if I had taken a more normal approach or pace for me, I would have flown through some of the slower sections more. And I think I would actually have enjoyed the book more, honestly.
That's a good point, Josh.
Yeah, Ange, how do you feel about House of Chains overall as a book?
Overall, I didn't like it that much. I'd say it was my second least favorite of all of them, first being the first one. And the reason being is that it feels like when you read the whole thing, like, I know it can't be condensed, but it feels like the whole book is just a setup for whatever comes next. Kind of like what AJ said. Like, I don't love the backstories of the characters that you guys loved, those two characters.
Troll and Unrack.
Them. So, and it was heavy in that respect. And then I just wasn't connected to any characters in this book at all. And then they killed my favorite one at the end, which really solidified that. I was not happy. So didn't love it, was pretty bored.
I also want to say, I think much more so than the last couple books, we really had some character arcs that I'm not going to say didn't go anywhere, but they have not fully finished. And I'm sure not in this next book because we're fucking going to the past, but it's tough reading. What's the guy, the Tistologian? I can't remember his name off the top of my head, who's like,
with the dad,
not Osric, his son.
Lorik.
I feel like Lorik's storyline, when it's finished in X amount of books, I think I'm actually really going to enjoy thinking about how it relates to this first one where he goes and sees his dad in the spirit realm or whatever. I think that'll be really cool. But as a one-off, it's tough. And the Absalar and Cutter stuff, I feel like we spent so much time with them for what? I don't know yet.
Yeah, there's a lot of unresolved threads at the end of this book, which makes me think when they are resolved, I'll look back on this book and be like, wow, I can't believe we've been sitting on this for, 5,000 pages or whatever,
So recently we recorded an episode about Steven Erikson's The Problem of Karsa Orlong essay, and that should come out later in the off season. And in it, I would say we have recorded it like just after we finished reading House of Chains, and I think I was pretty aggravated with the book, and I was pretty aggravated with Karsa, and I think I come across pretty harsh in that episode, and I mean everything I say. I'm not a big Karsa fan, and I'm not really a fan of this book, However, it's funny you say this, AJ. I think I've had a similar experience. I think as time has passed since I finished the book, I do feel myself more warm on it. And I do think there's a very clear thematic through line to a lot of these storylines and a lot of these characters. And I think a lot of it's pretty rich, and I enjoy thinking about it. And I actually have been reflecting on the book in an emotional way a lot this last month, However, I don't really think the plot coheres and comes together in a meaningful way that provides a satisfying finale to this story. And I think at the end of it, I think that is why I kind of feel adrift, is because I don't think ultimately it coheres into one story as an entirety.
Ooh, I like that. And I think it's tough because it's like we want to compare it so much to Memories of Ice because that's the book that just precedes it. But I feel like it's that's somewhat unfair. But at the same time, I think it's a really good point, Peter. Like there's so many storylines in this book that end just so far apart. Unlike the first three, where like we're pretty tight, It's usually like maybe 3 different at most, but it's always groups of people. But we also have like individuals or like pairs just kind of everywhere. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
But I suppose now it's time to ask, AJ, you kind of mentioned it. Yours is easy, but Inge, if you had to place your 4 books right now, how are you stacking them up, top to bottom?
Memories of Ice is the best. Then Dead House Gates. Then the first one, Gardens of the Moon. Actually, yeah. Then Gardens of the Moon, that one really was not that terrible. And then this one was just, I mean, I feel like maybe I'm just forgetting the good parts because they were so far and in between. But I did love when we went back and read about Lestar. Like I thought everything of hers was funny and interesting. But I just did not like this book. However, I did like just to put out there. I did like Karsa was I did like the Karsa parts. Like I did, but I did not like it. The book though, I didn't like it
as a whole.
I pretty much mirror India exactly. I have the same order for me. It's Memories, Dead House, Gardens, and then House of Chains. Which I did not think I would ever be saying that Gardens of the Moon is not my least favorite of the bunch. But I think it does, for all of its many flaws as a first book in a series, I think it does the Malazan, how do all the threads connect at the end thing better than House of Change did for me.
Yeah, I'm going to choose the same order actually, and I think here's kind of how I think about it, and maybe it's
Peter, are you sure?
Maybe it's a flawed.
This is how AJ gets his fucking ego boosted on the Discord again, because everyone's going to be like, I can't believe these fucking idiots. AJ's the only one who got it right. Are you sure you want to do this?
Maybe it's a flawed metric, but when I think about what book I would like to pick up and read again, do you know what I mean? I would choose Memories of Ice, then I would choose Dead House Gates, then I would choose Gardens of the Moon, then I would choose, do you know what I mean? That's just, and maybe that's not the best metric, and I think that's just, it's a very personal thing, this thing, but.
If that's the metric we're using, the Gardens of the Moon, I really want to reread, but I'm not until we do the series fully.
Yeah, I'm not even a huge Gardens of the Moon fan, but as I said early on making this podcast, the rereading the book's a game changer. So look into it, Now,
I would never choose to reread any of them.
Yet, who knows where you're going to be, Inch,
Yeah.
Life's long,
Facts.
Some questions on speculation to take us out come from the Elder God Draconis and Cal from the Discord, and I've paired two of them. Where could you see the end game going as of right now? And which particular character arcs are you most looking forward to seeing continued? So, India, the first question is pretty wild. I mean, where do you think this whole story ends up? But more importantly, who are you excited to follow and learn more about into this kind of second half, in a way?
I think that I have the most stake right now in somehow, don't know how, Crocus and Absolar, but also and mostly Tavore.
Interesting. I'm a little surprised you said Tavore after we've been a little hard on her. But
that's the reason, though. I want to see what happens next. I'm so confused as to how, is it just over with? Are we ever going to bring this up again? What's next for her? She's still there's still a lot to unpack there. We know nothing. We know nothing about her.
Yeah.
Josh, how do these 10 books end?
So my problem is, it's a twofold problem, my thoughts into the books. One, it feels like it would be the Steve choice to not have the last book be a confrontation against the Crippled God. But unfortunately, the last book is called The Crippled God. So I guess that's not the answer. And I probably could have had a better answer, but in this book, we met space people in a jade hand. And that really complicates things. So that's about as much as I got for the end of the book, because who even fucking knows? In terms of character arcs, I really am gonna regret saying this, but I gotta know why the fuck we keep seeing Iskarol Pust. Why is this dude important? Why did we have to know he has a wife? That has to be, the fact that we're learning more about him means at some point he's going to be pivotal, and I am so curious as to how. So,
AJ, who are you looking forward into following into the next books?
I agree with the other two so far. I do want to know, where Tavore leads and all that stuff, and I'm very curious about Iskarol Plus. But I think right now I am most curious about Fiddler and Cuddle. Because
that's a good one.
The Fiddler that we saw in this book was so different from the Fiddler that you guys talked about in Dead House Gates and stuff.
Well, I think it was different seeing him back in a squad.
Yes.
And, in Dead House Gates, he's so removed from that. So I think it's a different environment for the character.
Yeah, Fiddler, because I read the first third of Dead House Gates, and Fiddler is kind of like a Kalam-esque character. like what Kalam is doing in this book, Fiddler is doing in Deadhouse Gates in a way where he's just kind of like on his own journey doing stuff. If I'm remembering correctly, it's been a while. So seeing him in a squad in this book was interesting. But then now that his squad leader is dead and now everyone knows that he is like, you know, an ex-bridge burner with all this experience and whatnot, I'm curious to see if that manifests into anything, you know? And the fact that he keeps coming into contact with the ascended bridge burners. Like, I want to know what that deal is. You know, I want to know if Fiddler ascends, how Fiddler ascends, you know, if he keeps just like harnessing the power of these ghost bridge burners. I'm very curious about it.
My answer.
Okay.
Yeah, PB,
Thanks
what
for
about you?
asking.
Oh, sorry. Peter. Hey, Peter. What do you think? How do you think the books will end, buddy?
Yeah.
I'm so curious.
And with everything going on, what do you think is going to be the resolution here?
Hey, be detailed.
I think the character I'm most excited to
Not the
follow,
question, but okay.
although I've spoken so harshly about him, I'm excited to continue to reread Karsa's part of these stories, you know?
Yeah.
Because ultimately I didn't change my opinion of the character that much in this House of Chains reread, but I do think I came to a different understanding of him, and rereading those parts did make me think about the character in a different way. So I do think I am looking forward to rereading different parts of his story later on.
Neat.
Which is about as vague as I can be.
Yeah.
So
You did it.
now, that'll do it for us today on the House of Chains mailbag and wrap up episode. And that means in the month of October here, spooky.
Sure.
Love it.
So that means before Midnight Tides, there'll be a few more off-season episodes. We'll tweet out a schedule, but in the next coming weeks, I had another spoiler conversation with Hiskar Jarek about House of Chains. We talked about the second Willful Child book. We talked about the prom of Karsa Orlong and the death of the author. And then finally, we talked to Stephen Erikson again about House of Chains. So you can look for all those coming out soon. And we're going to start a read-through of Midnight Tides in about a month.
Early November.
So look for that then. So before we go, I just wanted to reaffirm our show's support for the movement for racial justice in America. We started our season with plugging links for ways you can be involved for movement towards equality in the United States. And everyone in our community is important and valuable, and that means saying Black Lives Matter. So goodbye.